when I got the great honor of running the advertising for the 2000 campaigns, one of the first things I did for due diligence was go back and study the history of advertising in presidential campaigns. And it was a fascinating exercise because what you see over time is that it really evolves. And the reason that it evolves primarily is because voters get used to seeing something and it's not as effective, so we did something differently. And you can kind of see these different phases of political advertising. Well, we only have 30 minutes, so we won't get to see much of it. But the first phase was political advertising was like selling soap, right?
Absolutely. Rosser Reeves running that first Eisenhower campaign in 1952. You saw the jingle. But I would add that although some things change, other things stay the same. And there are a number of themes that run consistently through political advertising from 1952 to today.
So first impressions are important in life, they're important in politics too, and these were introductions. And I want to tell a quick story about when we introduced President Bush at the convention, and Russ Schriefer and his partner put together a great introduction film, a biofilm. And I remember when we were shooting it, we interviewed Mrs. Bush and President Bush, and there was an exchange about the delivery room and when your daughters were born, and you completely scrambled it up, and we all laughed, and it was a funny moment, and we went back and we reshot it a couple times until we got it just right. And I remember we went into the edit room, and we started to fix it and put in the good line, and then that funny line came out, and we all looked and said, "That's great, it's so funny, it's so human, let's leave that," and it was so you, right? It was just a human, great moment. But you can imagine the response we got at the campaign. You know, Carl and everybody saw that and said, "Oh, get that out of, you can't put that in there." But people really hunger for authenticity, and it was a human moment. It was, and by the way, if you don't mind me saying so, we also didn't want to raise the bar of expectations too high. The one consistent thing about political advertising is great is great. I mean, there's sort of evolutions and phases, but great advertising is great advertising. And the greatest advertising, the greatest political messages are those that have vision and hope. You know, hope is such a powerful motivator. We talk about hope and fear, but the great candidates, you know, really communicate a vision, a hopeful sign. I mean, that things are going to be better. You have a message of change, how you're going to improve society, make people's lives better. So at the end of the day, there are lots of different approaches, different concepts, but powerful, great political advertising and campaigns have inspirational messages. And so
the hardest thing in any campaign, and you know, we always talk about as consultants and people involved in the campaign business, you talk about your wins. And you don't win everyone. You know, anybody who's been in this business a long time has had some really heartbreaking losses. And I think the toughest thing is when, particularly if you're in a campaign down the stretch in the last couple of weeks, and you know it's going to lose, and trying to keep everybody's spirits up, and trying to keep, you know, and if you're the candidate, trying to kind of keep everybody involved in the campaign because you know where it's going.
In the role of strategist for Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump's the nominee, what do you tell her?
Well, I think the first thing is be yourself. I mean, I think, you know, authenticity is the most important principle in politics, and so you can't try and out-Trump Trump. So I'd say, sort of tactically, what I'd say is, here's what's interesting. With Cruz and Clinton, it's a pretty narrow band, right? There's not that many voters truly at play. With Trump, it upsets the whole apple cart. So there's going to be a bunch of voters that might have voted for Barack Obama twice, maybe even voted for John Kerry, particularly sort of blue-collar men that might be available to Trump. So for the Clinton campaign, you have to know who they are. Then there's going to be a bunch of suburban college-educated women who might have voted for McCain, Romney, President Bush, who might be available to Hillary Clinton. So you've got to know who those people are, and you've got to go after them. And you've got to start defining Trump and Clinton and the race to them.
So, you know, one of the things that I think is interesting about this cycle is that really it's been while the media has been complicit, you can go, whether it's the Washington Post or the New York Times, you go on the editorial pages, and, you know, columnist after columnist are, you know, railing against Trump, telling it's going to be the end of, you know, the republic if he becomes the president. But you know, you go on Facebook or you're on Twitter, and people are pushing back, and they're real people. They're your neighbor down the street. Joe down the street is saying, you know, no, I think Trump is really dead on, and we've got to make America great again. And you know, David Brooks has no idea what he's talking about.
You know, Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders, to me, are a fascinating case study in American politics because they largely give the same speech.
Yeah.
You know, the system is rigged. you're getting hosed, and I'm going to fix it. And Donald Trump's going to fix it by taking on China and to a lesser degree Mexico and immigrants, but to a strong degree those as well. And Bernie Sanders is going to fix it by going after Wall Street. But their underlying, their supporters want to arrive at the same place through different means.
Yeah.
I think, so there'll continue to be advances in technology. I think virtual reality is going to be a big change in politics.
Interesting.
Maybe not by 2020, but by 24 and 28. You could see even presidential candidates, not just state representative candidates, interacting with voters, okay, based on a profile.
Yeah.
It's going to be, I think that's going to be a big advance. And how you can, I think, it's likely in 10 or 15 years, again, I don't think this is a healthy thing necessarily, people are going to spend more time with screens because they're going to be in these amazingly immersive and rich, gaming, entertainment, even educational. So finding them, you're going to have more data about that. So I think you're going to see more advance there. I think, to me, virtual reality is going to be the big next.
That's interesting, yeah.
By 2024, 2020. I think it's going to affect every part of our economy and every part of our lives, but I think it's certainly going to affect politics. I mean, Prime Minister Modi was the first candidate I'm aware of to use holograms. He used this in his election in India. Fairly crude, so he wasn't interacting with people, but he would give a speech somewhere and he'd be in 50 or 100 different communities and people would gather to see him. So I think you're going to see a lot of more advancements in those areas.